That was the wrong clip. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. And we are back once again with Return of the King, and this is the final part. We are finally at the end, and we have a lot, and I mean a lot, to cover tonight. So, real quick, for those that are tuning in, if this is the first time you have been seeing these Lord of the Rings streams with me and Phil, what we've been doing is we've been going through the movies, the extended editions specifically, and comparing them to the books. So Phil is our resident expert on the books, and we've been just kind of bouncing back and forth, like what happened in the books, what happened in the movies, and so on and so forth. I realize that this is the last part of the stream. So what I'm going to do once this stream is up, I'm going to make a playlist of all of the Lord of the Rings streams, and and that way if you want to go back and watch them, they're easy to find. And of course, Phil saying boo, boo, boo in the chat. All right, so let's get right into it. So when we last left off, we had left off with Frodo and Sam having just escaped Cirith Ungol. Frodo and Sam had reunited after Frodo had gotten taken by Shelob, and Sam had the ring. And there was a bit of a tense scene there where Frodo got the ring back. So now they're escaping Cirith Ungol, and they have disguised themselves in orc clothing and orc armor. So they finally make their way like down the path, and they see all of Mordor for pretty much the first time. And it looks like it is an absolute daunting thing to basically get from one end of Mordor to the other, where Mount Doom is, because number one, the eye is looking all around, and it's like a spotlight, which I know we mentioned this once before, Phil. There was no such thing as like an actual eye on top of the tower, wasn't it? It was more figurative.
Not in the book, even though it refers to, I guess the best way to say it, in the book they refer to it as like a pupil. But let's just say more like a window to Sauron. Where the movie it portrays it as an eye. I'm fine either way with it, however they want to symbolize it. Let's just say some image, either way you want to look at it, some image or form of Sauron is up there on top of the tower.
Right.
And how he looks around is, you have to remember, Sauron has many shapes. And some of them he cannot take anymore. Like he can't take a fair shape of an elf, like he did to deceive people. The image that you see that in the movies are him in cast in evil armor. So that's an image that he can take. But as far as some of these other ones, like in the past, he could take the form of a wolf.
Yeah.
Of a bat. Like a vampire bat. There's probably other ones, a cat. He has taken an image of a cat. But as of right now, let's say he's limited to what forms he can take. And the image that we know in the movie that he's known for is that cast iron armor that he's.
The spiky armor,
Yeah.
yes.
So.
Yeah. So while this is going on, Frodo is really, and I mean really, starting to feel the power of the ring at this point, because we're effectively in the ring's home country at this point. And so he's like, I don't know that I can do this, Sam. And Sam's like, don't worry, Mr. Frodo. Let's just worry about getting down the hill. Meanwhile, Aragorn and all of them, including Gandalf, are now taking counsel in the White Hall, if I had that right. Yeah, the throne room of Minas Tirith. And Gandalf says that Frodo and Sam have now passed beyond his sight into Mordor. And Gandalf is basically despairing, we'll say, saying, this was a stupid idea. I've sent Frodo to his death. There's, 10,000 orcs now that sit between him and Mount Doom. And that's when Aragorn gets an idea to muster up all of the armies of Rohan and Gondor and make a full march on the Black Gate as a distraction. Basically, it's a suicide mission where they know that they have no chance of winning for themselves. This is basically just their Hail Mary, we'll say, to buy Frodo time and the ability to get to Mount Doom and do what he needs to do. And so that's exactly what happens. Aragorn. Well, actually, hold on. First off, before that happens, Aragorn goes one night alone into the throne room and picks up the Palantir with his sword, Anduril, in his hand. And he contacts Sauron directly, basically saying, I've been running from you. You've been trying to find me. It's time to end this. And Sauron shows him a vision of Arwen dying, and that little even star necklace that he had been wearing this whole time falls off and breaks. Now this is interesting, because I remember in the theatrical version we see those visions of Arwen dying and the even star breaking, but they're presented to us in a nightmare during the scene just before Aragorn goes to talk with Elrond to get Anduril in the first place. So it's interesting that they took scenes that they had cut in the special edition and repurposed them in the theatrical one. But anyways, like I said, they ride out for Mordor. They ride out to the Black Gates. However, Éowyn and Faramir stay behind because, of course, their injuries they've got to recover. So, while this is going on, Frodo and Sam are still trying to make their way through the plains of Gorgoroth, if I said that right. And they notice that the armies are moving out. They're heading elsewhere. And they're noticing that they have their opportunity to move, but at the same time, they also see a band of orcs heading right for them. And so they try just sitting down on the bank to blend in, and of course they get included in the ranks. And I know for a fact that this is something very similar happens in the book, where again Frodo and Sam get mistaken for real orcs and get put into the ranks, right, Phil?
Yeah, that's how it happens with Frodo and Sam. They even do it in the same thing in the animation. As
And
far as that one line that you said about Gandalf saying that he sent Frodo to his death, that's only movie. That's not in the animation. That's not in the book.
Right.
Okay? And that kind of contradicts everything, because if you're going just by movie, okay, let's just go by movie.
Hmm.
What does Gladriel say about Frodo understanding?
That to be a ring bearer is to be alone.
And the other part that it will claim his life.
Hmm.
So he already knows that even he succeeds or fails, either way, he's got a death sentence. Now it doesn't
Yeah,
mean if he succeeds, he's going to die right away, but he is going to, let's say, pass on prematurely. Okay,
correct.
so if Gladriel knows that, I'm pretty sure Gandalf knows that. All right,
I
and
just
making
realized
that.
something, by the way. I
Go
just
ahead.
realized something. Would you agree with this statement if I said that these movies show a little bit, show more of Gandalf's human side than his Maiar side?
I would say, in a sense, it does, but it shouldn't really be that way
Hmm.
because, okay, Gandalf is a Maya. We already talked about in the last episode that Tolkien has stated and implied that the five wizards have come before. All right.
Exactly.
So if they've been here before and they've come back, then they know how mortals, even if you don't want to call an elf a mortal, but how
Hmm.
mortals are, mortal life on Middle Earth.
Right.
So I would think if it was his first time coming over here, Gandalf would probably have no inkling. He might understand a little bit, but he doesn't have the inkling of the emotion of people can die and pass on. I mean, he does
Hmm.
have the understanding of it, but it's different from understanding it and witnessing it. Okay.
Exactly.
And I think by this time, if you're going by the movies, Gandalf understands death.
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
mean, he experienced it
Yeah,
himself
right.
firsthand by this
But
point.
a permanent death is not something that he can understand because technically, yes, he can die, but doesn't mean that Gandalf is going to blow into nothingness. He's
Gandalf's
still
physical body can be killed,
killed,
but
but
his
he's
spirit will
still
live
a
on.
Maya, so he will live on. You
Hmm.
know, unlike when you can say the same thing where Sauron, yeah, he dies, and yeah, his spirit gets blown away, but he doesn't disappear. His spirit does live on. Even with
Right.
Sauron, his spirit does live on.
Right.
Gandalf has the ability once he dies. You have to remember Iluvatar intervened when he died. But
Hmm.
if he didn't, he's going back to pretty much Valinor. You can guarantee that. If since
Okay.
he's not a Maya that resides with a Iluvatar. He's a Maya that resides with the Valinor over there. So again, he doesn't have that. Look, Aragon dies. He's not going to the Undying Lands. He's going to Iluvatar.
Right.
Frodo and Bobo, and later on Gimli, who go to the Middle Earth. Yeah, they're going to go to I mean not Middle Earth, going to the Undying Lands. Does not mean they're not going to die there.
Right.
They are going to die. They're going to pass on. So, like I said, I would say if Gandalf was just arriving or first couple hundred years, though he understands death and where everybody's heading and going when they die,
Hmm.
uh, he has a knowledge of it, but he has yet in his early time here in Middle Earth experiencing it. Now he's had a good 2,000 years, and he knows how people can die and how it feels, how relationships end because of death. I think he
True.
has a greater understanding. But like I said, the statement that he makes, "Oh, I'm sending," he knew that day one when he realized that that was the real ring of Sauron. And he
Mhm.
knew it that from that point, let's be honest, even before they went to Rivendell, he knew he wanted Frodo to take the ring.
Yeah.
So to say he didn't understand the death and everything, well, he knew that from the very beginning, you know.
Mhm.
So I mean, I can say he feels the pressure and the unknowingness of what's going on with Frodo there. But listen, like I said, either way, you cut it out. Yes, there's a better ending if he succeeds and destroys the ring. Frodo's still going to die.
Yes.
You know,
So, anyways, getting back to the story, like I said, Frodo and Sam get picked up in a band of orcs that are marching toward the Black Gates. Now, here's where I know things are different from the book. In the book, this band of orcs and their captain get into an argument with a band of men that are loyal to Sauron. Is that correct?
that's
But in the
correct.
but in the movie, there's
It's
just a
not.
simple
It's not
infection. Yeah. And Frodo and Sam basically stage a fight with each other to get the orcs to start fighting amongst themselves,
right.
and they give the slip that way.
I do like the book and the anime version because it makes more sense. Because Samwise was smart enough to know how to get the orcs. You're going to take that from a dirty human?
Mhm.
No. So he played the part well, as was enough to cause a distraction for them to get away. In the
Right.
movie, it's somewhat similar, but there's no men there.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, it's okay. But I prefer the anime and the book version a little bit more.
I'm gonna disagree with you on that one just simply because I do not like the song "Where There's a Whip, There's a Way."
Yeah, well, if you don't like the song, that's fine. The scene doesn't, you can mute the
I mean, yeah,
music.
the scene is accurate to the book.
Yeah,
It's just they took one throwaway line from the orc captain in the book and turned it into a whole song. I think that's just stupid.
you have
But
to remember that was meant more for kids than it was for adults.
true enough. But anyways, Frodo and Sam give them the slip and they continue their trek on to Mount Doom. Eventually, Frodo stumbles. Oh, hold on. There's one more thing I forgot to mention. During the scene where Frodo is having a hard time getting to his feet when they're in the orc party, you get a shot of the back of his neck, and it is literally rubbed beyond raw from how much the ring is weighing down on him. Like we had already seen it when he was shirtless in the tower before he got the ring back, but it's worse now. Like every step they take closer to Mount Doom, especially now that they're in Mordor, the ring is physically becoming heavier for Frodo. And I
You
like how they showed that.
you have to remember that's showing you that the ring has the essence of Sauron, and it
Mm-hmm.
has the awareness. Both movie and anime all the same. The ring will lead people to go to another person. It will hide itself like it did after it betrayed Isildur. The ring ain't dumb. It knows where it's going. It knows that every step that Frodo is making towards Mount Doom is its destruction, and
Mm-hmm.
it does not want to be destroyed.
I
Yeah.
like the one line that Gandalf says in Fellowship: "Never put it on, for the ring, for the servants of evil will be drawn to its power. Remember, Frodo, the ring is trying to get back into the hands of its master. It wants to be found." So,
Like I said, it is Sauron, but it isn't Sauron on the same hand. Let's just say it has the essence of Sauron,
right.
and like I said, it is aware. The ring is aware. So if it knew it could somehow drop off of Frodo's chain, or if he had him wearing it, it fell off his hand, and it can get to Sam, and Sam was weaker, it will do it in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I do like it that it does show the weight of the ring. You know that it's the weight. The purpose of weighing down and wearing him out is so Frodo stops. And anytime Frodo stops or takes a break, like let's just say when they escape the orcs, Sam decides Frodo needs a break, and he gives him 8 hours, a small little nap, rest up a bit.
Yeah.
That ring knows if it makes itself harder, heavier to carry, that's more chances that Frodo is not going to get there, and it gets discovered by an orc or Sauron or the Nazgul.
Right.
So, like I said, it has awareness. So
Yes.
that's the best way to describe it.
Also, I just realized, and this is kind of on a side tangent. Virginia, I know you're watching. You'll think this is funny. Do you think when J.K. Rowling was writing the latter Harry Potter books and she came up with the idea for the Horcruxes, do you think at least in part she got the inspiration for the ring? Because think about it. The ring, as long as it existed, Sauron still had something of a presence within this world. And of course, the ring carried a piece of Sauron's essence within it that slowly corrupted whoever it was that carried it. Same thing with the Horcruxes. Each Horcrux had a piece of Voldemort's soul, and the longer you're around a Horcrux, the more corrupted you become. And of course, you have to destroy each, the ring and the Horcruxes, to defeat their respective owners.
I would say yes, but also I think they all took from King Arthur and Excalibur.
Okay.
When King Arthur kind of lose it there for a while, he, I don't want to say discards, but he doesn't hold and use Excalibur, and that takes
Hmm.
a toll. It isn't just like when you see the movie Excalibur. It isn't. Oh, we need to find the Holy Grail and bring that to King Arthur. King Arthur has to snap out of it, whatever he's going through, and part of it is that he can't hold and wield Excalibur.
Okay.
So Excalibur, and you have to remember, it comes from the Lady of the Lake,
Hmm.
and it does have some power. In the movie, not in the Tales of King Arthur, but in the movie Excalibur, when he first fights Lancelot, he wounds him, and the
Yeah.
sword breaks in the movie. And Merlin has the Lady of the Lake fix the sword. But not
Hmm.
only does the sword fix itself, but the sword heals Lancelot, even though it doesn't uh, totally heal the wound. It heals him enough. The wound never
Okay.
heals. So, in a sense, you can say the ring of Lord of the Rings is very similar into the sword Excalibur, which is also very similar to all the Horcruxes in Harry Potter, and the
Okay.
sword and the sword of what's the sword there that of they used that he used to kill the snake. Can't think of the name of the sword.
The Sword of Gryffindor.
Gryffindor. If that's
Hmm.
not a similarity to Excalibur, I don't know what is. So,
Arguably same as Anduril.
yep. So, like I said, I think everybody borrows, and considering Tolkien was English and Rawlings is English, and the English folklore of King Arthur, yeah, I think you can say they borrowed all from that, from the King Arthur legend. And you can
Right.
even throw in there Star Wars too. So,
Yeah. So getting back to the story, Frodo and Sam travel a ways through the wastes of Gorgoroth, and eventually Frodo stumbles and
He doesn't stumble. He does that fake fall that was the worst fall a person, even acting, can ever do.
At least that's what he's trying to portray is stumbling.
That
So
is a sorry fall. That is like he kicked his own feet from under him to fall down. Nah.
yeah. Okay,
I'm
question.
not. I'm not being judged about the actor. I'm just saying that fall was so awful. It was. Yeah.
So random question for you, Phil. Which would you rather watch? Elijah Wood fake stumbling or Patrick Stewart throwing a punch?
Elijah Wood fake falling because Patrick Stewart can't throw a punch.
Okay. So, anyways, Frodo stumbles, and that aside, and decides, you know what, this orc armor ain't for me anymore. And so both Sam and Frodo ditch their armor, and they stop for a moment, and they try and get some water. They're completely out of water, and I like the the quote that Frodo says, "There's not going to be enough water left for the return journey," and then Sam basically lays it out. I don't think there's going to be a return journey. Also, somewhere in this, the two of them are resting against the back of a rock, and they look up through like all the smoke and haze of the Mordor sky, and they see a single star, like through a gap in the clouds. So while this is going on, the armies of Rohan and Gondor, led by Aragorn, eventually make it to the Black Gates. And so Aragorn with Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Pippin, and Gandalf ride forward right up to the doors, and Aragorn calls out Sauron. Now I know that now the quote's different. Let me see if I can find the original quote of how Aragorn calls out Sauron.
I think it's more. The anime had it closer to the book than the movie because Gandalf. All right, in the book and in the anime is different than the movie. In the movie, you have Legolas and Gimli on a horse. The Hobbits on a horse. You have Eomer on a horse, and they're all riding up to the gate.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it's done in the book and the movie. Only Aragorn goes up to the gate, and it's very similar. He calls
Something
forth.
like, if I'm not mistaken, he says, quote, "The King of Gondor demands the Black Lord come forth."
Well, here's the thing about that, and that we didn't touch upon. Not Gandalf. Aragorn could have made himself king before he marched on the Black Gate, and no one would have stopped him. He chose not to be crowned king until afterwards, which makes sense.
Of
So when
course,
he's
he's still got
marching,
work to do.
yeah, when he's marching off to the Black Gate, he leaves the Prince of Dolorenth in charge of the wounded that's still there, and he leaves some men to guard and protect Minas Tirith. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's marching, yes, you see the emblem of the king. You see him armored up, even in the movie, as king. But you notice there's no crown on his head.
Right.
Now, in the anime, they made the mistake of putting a crown on his head. He doesn't have a crown on his head. He shouldn't have a crown on his head. He's not the king. And I understand he is, in a sense, calling out Sauron as a king because Sauron isn't looking at no little hobbit as his threat. His threat had always been Aragorn.
which is the whole point of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Keep Sauron's eye on Aragorn to give Frodo time. And
So, but like I said, even in the movie, it is pretty identical speech in the anime and in the book when he calls out. But the difference is the movie and the anime in the book, as opposed to the Peter Jackson film, he didn't ride out with a party.
right.
The army marches up to the gate. Aragorn comes a little bit forward and he does his calling out. Where in the movie, he does the calling out when he approaches the gate. And I even think he has a soldier from Gondor on a horse holding up a flag, and I think the flag, I don't remember.
We see that in the movie.
Yeah,
we do see that.
He's holding the flag up of the King of Gondor. So, but real quick, I have to mention this because you see them when they're marching. At first, there's horses. Okay, when they arrive at the gate, there's only 5 horses that purchased the gate. The army has no horses. Where did the horses go? Then when they go back to the army after they do their little talk, what happens to all the horses? The 5 horses that they had, they just disappeared.
Yeah, that one I don't have an answer for, and that one made me a little weird too. Like he's preparing to charge on horseback, but then when the charge happens, he's on foot. But before we get into any of that, we got to talk about who shows up here. So after Aragorn calls out Sauron, the gate opens, and through it comes the mouth of Sauron. And I just looked it up because I was trying to find that quote. The mouth of Sauron is what is considered a black Númenorian. So real quick, Phil, what is the history of the black Númenorians?
When Sauron was captured, or faint captured, and he was taken to Numenor, he corrupted people in Numenor to start worshipping Morgoth.
Okay.
That's why you have the elf friends, Elrindi, and then you have the Kingsmen, and they were pro Sauron, aka pro Morgoth, and that's the reason why they destroyed Numenor. But not all the black Númenóreans died on Numenor. A lot of the places in the south, Haradrim and all, there are colonies, just like there's colonies that were in Gondor and Arnor of the good Númenóreans. Well, the black Númenóreans had colonies in the south, and they were they're both Númenóreans. Just one side decided they were no longer going to be friends of the Valinor and the elves, and the other side was going to be pro Sauron and pro Morgoth.
Right.
Everything that the reason why they built that island, the Valinor, was to reward men for their fight against Morgoth. And within a few thousand years, half or more than half of Numenor decided to up and betray that trust and defect to the enemy.
Hello, Crit. He says, you're still talking Return of the King. This conversation is longer than the extended edition movie. I know, dude, but don't worry. This is the last stream of this. So just bear with us.
So, but I like the description and the anime version of the anime Black Númenórean than I did like the movie version.
So you like the animated one better?
Yes, because it shows that the mouth of Sauron, as a human, evil human, eyes, mouth, and everything. What we got is some crazy contraption that was some.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's a shame because the actor who played that, you don't have no clue who that actor is. That actor is the guy from the original Mad Max, the guy that was always flying the little go-kart helicopter.
Uh-huh.
That was the actor that played the mouth of Sauron. But because of that helmet, you can't even see his eyes or anything. You don't have no clue who it is unless you look it up.
Right.
So
Which which my take on that, for just the purposes of this movie, it works. And I can tell what they're going for. This is someone that might have been human at one point, but years upon years upon years of doing Sauron's bidding, saying what he's been saying, has clearly twisted and distorted him. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, in the behind the scenes, they intentionally made his mouth bigger and bigger. Number one, for the shock factor of it, but number two, to make it look like the flesh around his mouth is literally rotting away with every time he quotes Sauron.
if Sauron was Morgoth, I would say that would be perfect. But since Sauron isn't Morgoth, I would still go with what the book and the anime subscription of the Black Numenorian.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah. And
Also,
I
another
feel
thing,
bad for the actor because he does a good thing, but again, you have no way of knowing who he is unless you look it up. You know, uh, I take it, like I said, he's the actor from the original Mad Max. He's the guy that flies a little go kart helicopter.
mhm,
I think he's a known actor in Australia. So to be given the role, it's great, but to have no way to identify him besides credits, it's pretty sad. Hey, guess what? I got Lord of the Ring role. Guess what? No one sees me. Yeah.
I mean, it could be worse. You could be Christopher Lee that got cut out of the theatrical
Well, at that
version.
point, would you rather be cut out or would you rather be included and no one knows who you are?
Actually, now that I think about it, he was cut out of the theatrical. We
Pretty
don't
much,
see it.
pretty much. you know, I mean, can you give him a little eye sockets? Why
True.
did they cut? He has no eye sockets. Well, we don't know that, but why hide his whole entire face when we get to see his mouth? Why can't they
Right.
have little slots and maybe his eyes be a little, I don't know, chipped away a little bit? Kind of like similar with the mouth to the eye, and you can still
Mhm.
see, and you can at least somewhat acknowledge the actor. But yeah, yeah,
Right. But anyways, another thing. So the Mouth of Sauron comes out, and he says similar things to what he says in the book. He shows them the mithril shirt that Frodo had taken from him in Cirith Ungol, and he basically says that um, he basically is implying that Frodo died, and of course Gandalf is taking this bad to heart. Merry, Pippin, and Legolas and Gimli are taking it bad to heart too. Aragorn doesn't. And I know this doesn't happen in the book. Aragorn just straight up beheads this guy. But if I'm not mistaken, in the book, the Mouth of Sauron just goes back inside the gate walls.
book and animation, he just turns back and goes back behind the gate. Movie,
Right.
they had the little thing. Let's chop his head off. Okay.
Which again, for the purpose of just this movie, okay, that works, but it's not book accurate.
And I would also say why Gandalf, I'm not Gandalf, Aragon, either way, didn't believe that Frodo was dead. It's not just because of the they're holding up his the mithril armor.
Yeah.
If they would have had the ring, they would have known it.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragon knows if they ain't bragging they have the ring and Sauron ain't there with the ring, then somehow, some way, Frodo's still alive. He just don't have the shirt.
Exactly.
So
And at the point that the Mouth of Sauron falls, that's when the armies of Mordor start coming through the gate, and that is when the eye turns from Frodo and Sam, who had just barely managed to duck out of the way of the eye earlier, and they're able to keep going. And this is when we get that famous speech from Aragorn: "A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day." Amazing film speech.
that's movie, not book and anime.
I know.
Yeah, but it's a good speech.
It
You know,
is. Not
I think Tolkien on that part would have loved this. Had hey, let me include that in the book and the anime. But
exactly.
it's a good speech.
Not as good though as Theoden's speech, in my opinion.
I don't know. I would put it.
I think Theoden has a
Even though
better.
Sheridan does it at the time when he's at the Palinor Fields, and it looks like the balance is, they're doing it because they're trying to turn the tide.
Mhm.
Here at the Black Gate, they're not going to have it. It's a force of arms. They're not going to have a chance. Even though you see a big army of Rohan and Gondor compared to what you see them surrounded in the movie, they're, you know, they're not that money. So I think
Right.
odds alone, you know, that I think that speech was more inspirational at a desperate time. You know,
Yes. Like again,
so
it was pretty much known that again, this was a suicide mission that they were going for. They weren't trying to defeat the armies. All they were trying to do was just give Frodo time. And ultimately they're successful.
I'll disagree with you about being a suicide mission. I think when Aragon left Minas Tirith to march on the Black Gate, it didn't matter one way or the other. He was going for a fight. He wanted
Right.
to fight. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter what's going to happen. Win or lose doesn't matter. He was going there for a fight. Frodo, dead or alive, he was determined that's going to be the battle. Now, Frodo succeeds, destroys the ring, and they win the battle.
Mhm.
And even if that didn't happen and he would have lose, he was determined that was going to be the stand. Okay. Uh, Even with the odds against you, there's always a chance. There's always hope. You know, so I really don't think he was thinking this is a suicide mission. Might mean death, but I think he was determined to go to battle no matter what. This is our stand. You know.
Right. So while this is all going on, Frodo and Sam are continuing to make their way. They're at Mount Doom at this point, and they're making their way up the slopes. Frodo is literally on his hands and knees crawling up there, which I know that's accurate to the book. And of course, at this point, Aragorn does the classic for Frodo and charges in after it looks like he's going to get punked out by Sauron, who's whispering his name. But no, he charges in and the battle begins. And of course, pretty much everything that's going on is happening at the same time. So I'm going to have to bounce back and forth. Frodo winds up in
Could I
Sam's
mention
arms.
something real quick about
Yeah,
that battle, and especially that scene? I want to cut it. I want to talk about the cut.
I want to get to that in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So yeah, Frodo winds up in Sam's arms, and we get that iconic scene of, "Do you remember the taste of strawberries, Mr. Frodo?" And this is where we see Frodo at his most drained, his most weak, where he's like, "No, Sam, I can't remember the taste of food, the taste of water, the feel of grass. It's just me and the ring at this point." And this is where we get, of course, "I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you." Pretty much the scene that the character of Samwise Gamgee was made for. Like, this is one of the reasons why this scene right here is reason number one for me why, while yes, Frodo is the main character, Sam is the true hero, because Frodo had Sam not been there, Frodo would have likely given up at this point. He would have just sat down, probably ready to die, and something or someone would have found the ring and got it back to Sauron. But Sam was like, "No, yeah, I'm not going to let you sit here and quit. We are going to keep going, even if I've got to carry you."
Since you threw the gauntlet down, why I would say Sam was brave in every aspect. the true hero isn't Sam. It isn't Frodo. It's Gollum. Gollum is the key. He always been the key.
Yeah.
He's been the key since the first time he got the ring. All right. Now, granted, Gollum doesn't know that he is the key. No one else knows, but probably Gandalf. Gotta
And he
remember,
said it. He said it once to Frodo when they were in
there you
Moria.
go. Gandalf, look, even before the quest for the ring to go to Mount Doom, who was Gandalf and Aragorn looking for?
Gollum.
Gollum is the key. Gollum is already, let's just say, he was granted unnatural life. The
Mhm.
ring didn't, while it kept him alive, it didn't destroy him. Unlike what's happening to Frodo now, that
Yeah.
wasn't happening to Gollum. And remember the key words, especially in the movie, not the book. We do not know what role
For ill or
Gollum
for good.
has to play.
Yeah.
So I would call it, I wouldn't say Manwë to Valinor. I would say Iluvatar, aka God of this world, is playing along and using things that nobody knows. You know, Gollum, how many times between helping Frodo to get there has been, he's been in movie wise pushed off a cliff, fallen off the cliff. You
Yeah.
think he's dead sometimes if you didn't know anything better, and he
Mhm.
keeps on popping up out of nowhere. Even when
Exactly.
Frodo is going up to Mount Doom, being carried by Sam, who
Yeah.
comes
Like
out of nowhere?
Gollum does. Like they get
Gollum.
right to the doorway, and Gollum tries to strangle Frodo to get the ring, and this is basically where he admits that it was all a ruse the whole time, that he only ever cared about the ring. And Sam gets into a fight with Frodo while Frodo runs his way up the hill. Meanwhile, while this is going on, the battle at the Black Gate is becoming pretty desperate for the heroes. And yes, Phil, this is where we're going to talk about the cut. So for those
Well,
that don't know,
go
you go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. So for those that don't know, if you look into the behind the scenes of this particular scene, there are early versions of this scene that show Aragorn in a sword fight with Sauron himself. Like the suit of armor that we see at the beginning of the first movie,
That,
we
that
see we see
you know,
footage
he
of that.
in the cutscene right before Aragon says for Frodo.
Hmm.
All right, so this is going back a little bit. We have to back up a little bit. Right
Okay.
when after he gives that speech, Sauron appears in between his army and Aragon. And the image he's able to create for that very second is him in bare elf form. You see him in a white light.
Hmm.
And you can go while we're talking about it, you can go look at that and you can see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And for a second, everybody is hypnotized by Sauron in that elf form. And it even sees the effect on Gandalf, oh, not Gandalf, Aragorn. When Aragorn turns back and says for Frodo, if you look at his face, it looks like he's been crying. Now,
Yeah,
he wasn't crying because he gave that speech. I think it was affected by the fair image of
I got it.
Sauron.
I got the picture.
Yep.
So
And
let me zoom this in a little bit here for you guys to see it.
don't play it because you can get a copyright strike.
Oh, that's just a picture. That's
Yeah.
not a video.
And right after, even if you notice the look on people's faces, I think Gandalf, I don't think they ever met as Maya. But if you look at Gandalf's face, you look especially at Legolas' face, they're hypnotized.
Yeah.
Okay. Then when Aragorn turns around, that's when he gives the speech for Frodo. But if you look at his face, and I don't know if you got an image of it, if you look at his face, it looks like he went from giving a very big, brilliant speech to look like he was crying. And then he says to his friends, I guess, for Frodo, and then goes after Sauron, who then drops the fair image and goes back to the armor image.
All right. Here's the picture here.
Yep. Now, if you do a before image of him giving the speech, he don't look like he's crying, but you look right there, he looked like
those are tears.
and
I could see
crying.
And I could see where the movie, as it released, could have played it off of, oh, he's emotional because he knows he's doing this for Frodo because he loves Frodo as a friend that much.
No,
but
that had nothing. That image right there, where you're seeing him, had nothing to do about Frodo. I know he says I'm going to do it for Frodo afterwards. I think when you see Sauron in his fair form, I would equivalent. The only way to compare it with anything is seeing the devil in his angelic form.
Right.
Okay. If you were to see an angel, I think anybody here, or between you and me, or anybody listening, you would get touched deeply, regardless. And then reality hits that's an evil being, and that's the fair form is only a ruse.
Exactly.
And I think Aragorn, for that second, was
falling for it,
passionate about it, because he's seen an angelic being. Now, mind you, you have a guy standing next to him, behind him, but he's clouded in an elderly man's form, Amaya. But this is totally different than seeing what he showed there when you see him in the fair form. You're seeing him in his true Sauron in a majestic Maya form.
Right.
Okay. And that's powerful. That's powerful.
And later on.
And you got to think of it this way. Forget about the ring. Forget about all that army. You're taking on what we would call an angelic being. Mm-hmm. Your chances alone on that is probably slim to none. So I think all that in that instance is playing on Aragorn, but he still knows that, okay, I still have to fight him no matter what. I can't just turn around. I can't be intimidated. And yeah, he might have showed me an angelic form, but I know that that's only a ruse. Okay, he grew up knowing how he deceived. And remember, Aragorn calls him the deceiver because he's a Númenórean, and he's been told what has happened to his people being deceived by Sauron in that angelic form.
Right.
So, but like I said, thank you for showing it. It looked like Hugo Morris. I mean, not Hugo Morris. I can't even think of the name of the actor now.
Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, he was looked like he did it well. But he, like I said, to me, I noticed that when I saw it in the movie theater. Why would he be crying? It doesn't make sense in the theatrical version. It really, in extended, it does a little bit, but it's only in that deleted one where it shows him doing that you fully understand why he looks like he was crying. You know. Mm-hmm. I wish they would have left it alone. I didn't like the fact that they edited it out and they put the org in its place.
That's another thing too that I was referencing. They do show another part of this where Aragorn is outright dueling Sauron, as I said, but they decide because they didn't show Sauron in his angelic form, they're not going to have the duel, so they threw in a random cave troll in his place.
What they did was they took a CGI of an orc and then impose that on the actor in the armor fighting Aragon. So
Right.
it's a shame, you know. I think that is one mistake that I think Peter Jackson wish he could take back.
Mm-hmm.
So
So everything is looking absolutely dire for them. But then who shows up just in time? But once again, the winged hussars, this time in the form of the Eagles. So the Eagles show up and they start mopping the floor with the Nazgul that were flying around and, working their fear magic on everyone. And of course, while this is going on, by this point, Frodo and Sam have reached the Crack of Doom. And we get, of course, the big climactic scene where Sam is urging Frodo to throw the ring into the fire. And I really like how they did this little bit of cinematography, where you're looking from Frodo's point of view at the ring, and the ring looks the shiniest and most beautiful that it's ever been, just kind of really trying to visually put forth how appealing the ring is looking to Frodo right in that moment, leading up to, of course, Frodo turning and saying, "The ring is mine," and he puts it on.
I have two things to say about both scenes. The
Uh-huh.
first, the Eagles. And I hopefully you remember who controls the Eagles, Paul?
Iluvatar.
No.
Who?
That's Manway, the Balinar, which you would consider Michael in our world,
Uh-huh.
over there in the Undying Lands. And this
Okay.
isn't the first time the Eagles have shown up. Okay? In battle.
Right.
But here you have to say it's Manway that sends the Eagles because let's just say he wants to make sure the tide is turned. And I will say this at this point in time, while the Eagles are coming and Frodo is deciding what he's going to do with the ring, it's over for Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
Ring or no ring. Soon as them Eagles from Manway show up, it's over. This is the equivalent of the Balinar. The Balinar, they're not doing like they did with Morgoth. They're not coming over here to fight a battle, take Morgoth and throw him in the dark reaches of the darkness and
Mm-hmm.
waiting there for the end of time. Manway sending the Eagles in his place of the Valinor to defeat Sauron and his forces. Right here, right now, it does not matter about the ring. And anybody can disagree with me. But as soon as them Eagles come from Manway, because he's the one that sends them. It's not Radagast, because we don't know where Radagast is. Not Gandalf had no clue the Eagles are coming.
Yeah.
This is Manway's intervention. Now, the only other time you get an intervention, movie wise, like this, is in The Hobbit, which we'll discuss when we get there, when they come in the second movie. They appear out of nowhere.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on a second. They appear twice in The Hobbit. They appear
Yes, they
first
do.
to rescue Gandalf and the dwarves and Bilbo from the burning trees, and
Yep.
then they show up again at the Battle of the Five Armies.
Again, but you have to remember, no, even though Radagast has the ability to with nature because of the Valinor he serves,
Mm-hmm.
the Eagles are, let's just put it this way, they're the servants of Manway, the Valinor. All right. So when he sends them, only he can send. Look, he can summon them and send them, and that's what's happening here. Manway himself, man doesn't have the ability to turn to the tide and defeat Sauron, but the Eagles do.
Right.
So I want to make this point that at this time, even in the movie, when the Eagles appear, it's over. Sauron, it doesn't matter if Frodo never destroys the ring. It does not matter if Sauron gets a hold of that ring. At that time, the eagles are the sign of divine intervention. The eagles in Tolkien are the sign of Manwë. When they warn the Numenorians to change their ways, it's the eagles. When he sends a giant cloud in the shape of the eagle, warning them in Numenor, change your ways, it's the eagles. Again, the eagles are what's helped defeat Morgoth. So when you see them appear here, what I'm trying to tell people is, and you can disagree, it's fine. When the eagles appear, it's over. Right then and there, it isn't a question that man and the eagles are going to defeat Sauron on their own. Now, yes, they are going to defeat him on their own. The ring has now become secondary. Whatever happens to the ring doesn't matter now. The Valinor pretty much has spoken.
So with
they might
that,
not appear in there. They might not be appearing in Middle Earth. They might not be at the Battle of the Black Gate. But this is the next best thing. The eagles appearing is the Valinor. So
with
something
that,
to
then
think about.
So with that, then back inside the Crack of Doom, Frodo is walking around invisible. Sam is watching helplessly, only to get clocked in the back of the head by Gollum with a rock, and Gollum immediately pounces onto Frodo and gets into a wrestling match with him. And Sam watches as Frodo gets hold of Frodo's hand and bites Frodo's, specifically his left index finger off, and that gets the ring off Frodo and back into the hands
Pointer
of Gollum.
finger that gets put off.
Yep.
Pointer.
Yep, his index one.
But
this one. So
I would question this in the book. I question this in the anime, and I will even question in the movie. All right. Even if his teeth were as great as old as he is, but let's say they were good as he was young.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think a human person, or even a humanoid person, has the strength to bite through bone?
Honestly,
Might be able
yes.
to bite flesh, but bone.
I've heard rumors that it is possible for the human jaw to be able to bite through your finger with no more force as it would take to bite through a carrot. The only thing stopping you is your brain's not letting you.
Could you bite through a chicken bone with your teeth? And that's a chicken bone, and the chicken bone is weaker than a human bone.
I've never tried.
I don't think it's possible. I understand book wise, I understand even movie wise, and the implications. But in reality, could he bite and take the skin and the flesh off the bone? Possibly, yes. But actually biting through bone. I mean, the only way he could possibly do it if he got lucky and did the bite on a joint. But even then,
I mean, it kind of looks like it because it separates right here.
Mm-hmm. But the way he does it, even anime in the movie, it looks like it didn't. He does like a pull and a yank, and I won't say it isn't humanly possible, because sometimes humans can get strength when they're in stressful situations.
Yeah, and we all know that applies to Gollum too.
But I don't like the fact that it was done that way. I would like to seen it, and I'm nitpicking here. I don't think it's humanly possible. I mean, the chances of it, 1 out of 10,
right,
that he actually bites off a bone,
But anyways, the point is, Gollum now has his hands on the ring again, and he is celebrating with this. And again, I know this is another area where the book is different from the movie, because in the book, he basically dances himself right off the ledge and falls in on his own. But in the movie, Frodo pushes him and he goes over the ledge too, only to catch himself at the last minute. And then Gollum falls all the way down, and we get that iconic, but it's scientifically impossible scene where Gollum's just laying there on the lava and then just slowly sinks in. That there's a whole okay, so I'm gonna do y'all a favor real quick. There's an old YouTube channel called Because Science that explains why scientifically this would not be possible. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. But anyways,
while you're doing that, do you notice what does Gollum do while he's falling into the lava? What does he do?
he's trying to save the ring by holding it up.
Trying to save the ring at all effort, not save himself. He holds the ring, even if for a few precious seconds. He doesn't want the ring to get destroyed in the lava. You know, even though it's only like 3 seconds before he passes away. You know, but I'll agree with you. I think the anime version has Tolkien's idea how Gollum meets his fate.
Right.
He gets the ring, dances, and he's celebrating. I mean, I know he does it in the movie, and Frodo gets kind of second wind and a little pissed off, and then he decides to go after him and fights him and push him off. But I think the anime and the book has it right. He dances himself to death, and unknowingly, the unwilling hero, if you want to call him that, destroys the ring. Frodo, you have to remember, however you want to paint it, he almost pulls it Isildur, and Samwise actually becomes, and you want to say, Elrond. Throw it in the fire. Throw it in the fire.
It's literally the same.
Yeah. So, like I said, the unwilling hero is the one that actually does the deed. And again, you have to ask yourself, if Smeagol wasn't there, is Samwise going to be able to stop Frodo? And would he stop Frodo?
I think.
Because Elrond couldn't kill his, even though he's hundreds, not even thousands of years descended relative of Isildur. He couldn't do it. So if Elrond couldn't stop Isildur or kill him and throw it in the ring, I don't think Samwise would have been able to. Even if he knew, I don't think he would have done it.
And Frodo would have walked himself right back out of the Crack-a-Doom, pretty much right up to Sauron's tower, and it would have been done.
And let's just say he does that. Like I said, the deed's done when the Eagles come. But if someone gets the ring and still gets defeated, let's say body destroyed again, might him having the ring might be able to be enough of his so-called energy to hundreds, maybe 500 years or even lesser down the road, that he can bring his form back and try all over again.
Exactly.
Right.
But like I said, the ring falls into the lava with Gollum, and eventually it shows the writing on the ring one more time, and then it breaks down and is melted away into nothing. And the effect is felt immediately. Like, you see the eye visibly freak out over this. The tower starts collapsing. The orcs start losing all of their courage. And basically, it's basically the apocalypse for specifically Mordor. And Mount Doom starts erupting. Sam manages to pull Frodo up from the ledge, and they start making their escape. Different meteors are falling from the sky, knocking the Nazgul out, and everyone's cheering on. But then they realize, oh crap, Mount Doom's erupting, and Frodo and Sam were in there, and they think they're dead. And then Frodo is finally relieved. It's over. The ring's destroyed, and him and Sam sit kind of on this island around the lava on the ledge, thinking they're about to die. And we're going to kind of lightning round through the rest of this. Gandalf and the Eagles show up to rescue them. They get all taken back to Minas Tirith, where Frodo and Sam are nursed back to health. And then after everyone, we have the reunion. Real quick, Virginia says, it's amazing how quickly things can fall to chaos when our sense of security and triumph fail. Amen.
I want to say something, and I know this will take a couple minutes, but I'm going to say this. That's not the ending of how it ended in a book and in the anime. Okay? Sauron, as the Eye, doesn't do that. Okay? When Sauron gets defeated, we know that he takes like a spiritual, ghost-like form, rises up as a great spirit, looking to Valinor, and then the wind comes from the west, guess a wind from Manwë, and scatters and blows away the spiritual form of Sauron. So that doesn't mean Sauron's no more. It doesn't mean that he is no longer like AKA ghost, which he is. He's just a spiritual form that can't do anything. Okay. Next thing, the Eagles. Somehow there's enough eagles in the book and in the anime that once the ring is thrown into the lava, the eagle starts gathering everybody, and they manage to carry the entire Gondor and Mordor army are now being carried away by eagles. Now, I'm not sure how many. Let's just say they had 5,000 people there. That's a lot of eagles to be carrying a lot of people away from there.
Well, you got to consider the eagles are also physically huge.
Yeah, but even if they were to hold 4 people in a claw, how many eagles is that, Paul? That's a lot of eagles.
True.
You know? So, a little bit better in the movie version, but like I say, anime and the book version, the eagles carry everybody away. You know, don't know what happened to all the poor horses. I guess they got destroyed somehow. But yeah, the eagles carry them away. So
like I said, Frodo and Sam get taken back to Minas Tirith, nursed back to health, and Aragorn is officially crowned king. He has his happy reunion with Arwen, and I know that, and they don't really make mention, they don't draw too much importance to it in the movie, but he also sings kind of a song at his coronation, the same song that apparently Elendil did when he got coronated, talking about his Númenórean heritage. And then we get the scene where the 4 hobbits are standing there and they're trying to bow to Aragorn, but he's like, you guys bow to no one, and the entire mountainside bows to them. Now, here's where we get to the big one. We've been referencing this absolutely huge change from the book pretty much since we started these series, but it's time to get into it, Phil. In the movie, they go back to the Shire and everything's okay. That's not how it happened. The Scouring of the Shire. Let's get into it.
Well, I will say these multiple endings with the movie. First, the kneeling down between everybody kneeling down to the hobbits. That's not in the book or the anime. Though they acknowledge what they did, they don't kneel before them. Second of all, they skip over the story of the White Tree. The White Tree's dead.
Hmm.
But somehow Gandalf knows there's a seedling way above the mountain, above Minas Tirith, and leads Aragorn there to the sapling, okay, which replants the new tree. Movie wise, they show you the tree just regrows magically. Didn't happen that way. Uh, but as far as now, we're getting to the scouring of the Shire. Yeah, they totally skipped over that. I think it's a shame they did that. But you have to remember, they're limited on the time of their time in the theater, how long a movie could be.
Hmm.
And how many endings did we get in the movie theater? I can remember I
Oh,
was getting up
dozens.
3 or 4 times thinking it's over, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay, so real quick, before we go any further, let's just real quick overview what happens in the Scouring of the Shire for those that don't know. So, long story short, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin get back to the Shire to find it in an absolute shambles, where basically it's been taken over by Sauron and Grima Wormtongue. And you've got, correct me if I'm
Sharky,
wrong, Phil. Yeah,
it's going by the name Sharky now.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got a little bit of a Hobbit civil war going on where some hobbits have aligned themselves with Saruman and some haven't. Is that correct?
Pretty much, it'd be like anybody. If somebody come took over your state of Virginia, you know, and he's in control of it. Let's say we don't know how long the period of time when he leaves Orthanc or forced to leave Orthanc, and the time the hobbits make it back there after the coronation. So let's say it's a year. In a year's time, you're going to have some people that'll be compliant. There's going to be some
Yeah,
people that are we'll wait our time before we do anything, and there's other people that are going to say we're going to resist as much as we can.
right. I mean, in the movie, they say it's 13 months to the day
Mhm.
since they first left the Shire.
So then
But
you
I don't
got
think
a
that's
year and a
accurate.
month that they, before they get back. So yeah, it's logical, and you have to ask yourself why Saruman wants to even go to the hobbits. I guess a little revenge because the hobbits have pretty much led to his downfall.
Hmm.
So, but the story goes, they get into a fight. There's a battle, and the good hobbits win. Uh, they Frodo and them actually again spare Saruman, tell him to take him and his with the followers and leave. And it's during that period when he's getting ready to leave that he kind of humiliates Wormtongue and does the slap, which you see in the beginning on the movie wise, the Lord of the Return of the King, and
Hmm.
that's when Wormtongue takes a dagger and stabs Saruman in the back,
Only
kills
to
him.
get shot down himself
Yeah,
by
by the
other
hobbits, the good
hobbits.
hobbits, which was similar to what happened with Legolas shooting at Wormtongue. He
Right.
dies, and the similar thing happens that happens to Sauron when he gets defeated. His spirit rises from up out of his body, and it's facing towards Valinor, and it looks like he's starting to move west. And then something happens. The wind comes out of nowhere against Manway and
Hmm.
does something similar that he did to Sauron. He
And he gets denied.
gets denied, and his let's say his spirit gets blown away. It doesn't mean that he gets destroyed or he doesn't have a spiritual body. You can see and probably would see Sauron and Saruman if you can look into the undead world. But since you don't have a ring or any connections there, it'd be pretty hard for that to happen. So, but they're still alive. They're just their punishment until the end of time, till Morgoth comes back
Is just
and
wander formlessly.
wander around. Now they can see what's going on. They can but they can't they can see, but they can't interact with the living world. They can interact in the dead world, like you've seen with the Nazgul when they stab Frodo. You see the undead world. Well, they have a form, but their form is there.
Right.
So, but
So,
yeah, we got a little bit more to talk about. Let's talk
oh,
about
we do. Well, hold on
the
a second.
ship.
Well, hold on a second. We can't go there yet. There's one scene before we get to the Grey Havens that I want to highlight. And I think, again, I don't think this was accurate to the books, but I like that they included it
The
here.
Green Dragon.
Well, that is a good scene too, just going back to their life as it was, but they know that they've been through so much that the other hobbits won't. That's a good scene, but that's not the one I'm talking about. The one I'm talking about is when Frodo is back in Bag End and he's kind of narrating to himself, how do you pick up the pieces of a life you laid down? Basically saying, I can never go back. I can never go back to how things were before I had the ring because of what I went through. And again, I don't know that that is accurate to the book, but I like that they included it because I see, at least I interpreted that as kind of an homage to Tolkien himself being a World War One veteran and seeing the things that he saw. Obviously, he put a lot of his World War One experiences into the movie, and so I think they did that as kind of a tribute to him. Is that about accurate?
I would say so. Like I said, it's you have to remember, even if a traumatic experience Frodo goes to, everything that happened to him bodily, everything even though it worked out, he's broken.
Mhm.
Okay.
He
Uh,
even makes mention during that scene when Sam comes over that at the time of that scene, it had been 4 years to the day since the encounter at Weathertop, and his stab wound never fully healed.
no, but you have to ask yourself, just like you as a person growing, you'll never be 14 again.
No.
No matter how much you want to try or act or everything, you'll never be 14. You're 14 once.
Hmm.
Frodo will never be that person that before he had the ring. And it's sad, but even if he never had the ring, even if he grew up into a nice old age, you know, he never. Bobo's never the same. No one's ever the same. You know
No.
how you are when you're younger and experiences things when you're younger. When you're 70, you're going to experience something totally different. You're never the same person. You're always growing. You're always experiencing, good or bad, and you change for it. You know, uh, willingly or unwillingly.
Exactly.
But when it comes to the ring and everything, even you have to remember, everybody's supposed to feel this great relief. The ring's destroyed. Sometimes the damage done is, you know, too much. And for Frodo,
Exactly.
it is too much. You only
Now,
have so many people that were bearers of the ring, and I'm not talking about the elf rings or the dwarf rings or
the
the men
One Ring.
rings. I'm talking about the people that actually held the One Ring.
Yes.
That's Saruman, Isildur, Gollum,
Gollum, Bilbo,
Bo, and Frodo. Five
and
people.
and briefly Sam. So technically
And it
six.
never, and none of them people, either lesser degree with Sam, have a good life. Even though Frodo did, not Frodo, Bobo did have a big long and life. It did in the end take a toll on him for having the ring.
Exactly. And real
So
quick, I want to just throw this in there. We're almost to the end, but there's a scene in here that is that's in the books that is not in the movie that is in the animated version. The fact that Bilbo reaches an age, I don't remember the exact number, but he basically becomes the world's oldest living hobbit because of his time with the ring. outliving Bull Roarer, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
And having seen that, now, granted, what we see of Bilbo in the movie, he is incredibly, and I mean incredibly aged. He almost looks like Walter Donovan if he had drank the wrong Holy Grail, like that. But
You have to ask yourself, because the ring chose to leave Gollum, and in a sense, it had the sense for Bobo.
yeah,
What was the ring thinking? I mean, I think the only opportunity that ring had, minus being with Gollum, was to be found and picked up and would be dropped by a goblin, which probably would have never, he would still would never made it to Sauron. And I think
right.
the ring actually took a chance with going with Bobo and, actually staying for a while with Bobo. Uh, to, let's say, better opportunity to leave. But you have to granted, the ring stuck with Bobo.
Yes.
It might not have been as long as he did with Gollum or Sauron, but it was a lot longer than Isildur and a lot longer than with Frodo. And
that
for
is
some
true.
reason, it didn't have a negative effect, nor did it do anything to cause ill to Frodo. I mean, not Frodo, Bobo.
So getting back to the story, we see Gandalf driving a wagon with Frodo and Bilbo in the back, and we see Bilbo ask Frodo one last time, "Could I see the ring?" And Frodo admits, "I'm sorry, I lost it." But by the time they get to the end of the journey, they find themselves at the harbor at the Grey Havens, and we see, and I know this isn't accurate to the book, but we see Galadriel, Elrond, and Celeborn that are there ready to depart on the boat. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you said, Phil, that Celeborn should not have been there.
No,
Um,
and I'll explain.
Glorfindel. Glorfindel should have been it, right?
I will explain as best as I can. In the book and in the anime, the people that are getting on the boat is Elrond,
Mm-hmm.
Galadriel, not her husband, even though it shows in the movie the husband. No, he stays in Middle Earth for at least another 100 years. Okay,
Yes.
so him and his wife are separated, much like Elrond is separated from his wife. Glyffindel and the shipwright, the guy who does the ships. What's his name? The guy who
I
builds all
don't
the
know.
ships for the elves to go back to to Valinor. So they're the group that gets on that boat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gladriel's husband doesn't get on the boat. Uh, there's a difference there. Uh, Pretty much everything else you can say it's pretty much fine. Another thing they do skip is that Gandalf spends a whole year with Tom Bombadil to rest and recover. Tolkien never speaks about what they discuss, what they do, why he's there for a whole year, other than he's resting and recovering. But Gandalf, like no sooner than the hobbits go to back to the Shire, he's going for a whole year to spend with Tom Bombadil. So there's a difference there from the movies and the books. You know, as far as future, like I said, uh, eventually Gladriel's husband and almost most of the elves that are in Lorien all leave. Uh, Later on, Legolas, Gimli, and Sam, they go to the Undying Lands,
Yes.
and pretty much Aragon dies eventually after I think another 100 some years, and Arwen gets a little depressed after realizing, her husband's dead. You would think she
Wow,
would want to stick
mortality
around
sucks.
for her son and his family, her family, but
Mhm.
I think she gets really super depressed and she travels back to Lorien, back where her grandmother, Gladriel, and her grandfather lived.
Mhm.
And she goes to the mountain. You see the clips of her laying on the ground in the movie. Well,
Yes.
that's exactly what she does. She goes to the mound where it's near where the magic of the elves are gone. So none of the buildings and the trees and none of that specialness, that's all gone. It's turned to more natural than the power of their special elf rings. And she
Okay.
lays down on that mound and she gives her life up. So that's how she meets her end. But, you know, it's a long journey. There's a lot of give and take here. uh,
Yeah, we have covered a lot,
yeah,
and we
like I said,
technically
I
haven't
mean,
even hit the
I,
credits
I
yet.
can still remember like it was yesterday, 2005, in the theater. And after the first scene cuts out, when they're done doing the coronation, the screen goes to black, and there's like 5 seconds. And I'm getting ready to get up, and people with me are getting ready to get up. They went with me to go see the movie. And lo and behold, we see they're in what's that the Green Dragon, and we get
Yeah,
that whole thing.
we get the wedding.
Yep, and then everything, and then the talk and everything, and then it fades to black. So we said, okay, it's over. So you get everybody in the theater is getting up again, only to have the little scene where they're going towards the Grey Havens, and we get that whole scene, and then the
And,
movie actually ends, but we don't know this, and there's people waiting. Is there another ending popping up? You know.
right.
I give Peter Jackson even. I think that was a little mess with the audience type deal. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I'm used to it because I've grown up watching these movies, so I know what to expect. But I can definitely understand the whole multiple endings confusing people. But anyways, getting real back, just closing this out. So old Bilbo, um, boards the boat, and ultimately so does Frodo. He says goodbye to Sam, to Merry, to Pippin. He gives Sam the book saying the lost pages are for you, and he and Gandalf both board the boat and they sail off to the Undying Lands. And the movie ends with Sam returning to his home with Rosie and his two kids,
he said
and
he's home.
he says he's home. And that is finally the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I've been saving this clip till then. I'm gonna play it now.
It's gone.
And that's enough of that.
I
So,
do. I do want to have one final thing, and then I'm done. Please remember that even though Frodo and Bobo, and in the future Gimli and Sam go to the Undying Lands, there it isn't undying for them. That's for the elves to. That's their temporary heaven until the Earth, you know, what you would call Middle Earth, has its final battle with Morgoth.
mhm.
Okay, that's for the Valinor to reside. Okay, now there's been people that have tried to go to Valinor, and let's say it's pretty much told that if you were to go as a human to Valinor, you at one point now, since the Numenorians messed up everything, and there's no way for a non-elf to get there without
Mhm.
elf helping him and permission from the Valinor to go to the Undying Lands. You're like a butterfly. You can go there with the permission, but your life expectancy isn't going to be that long. Why it might be pleasant. All right, like Bobo, I wouldn't be surprised within 5 years after going to the Undying Lands, he passes away.
Right.
Frodo might live maybe 20 more years and he passes away. I can't speak on Gimli how long, but if when Sam goes there, he's old. I wouldn't put him that much. The big question people ask is when Sam goes there, probably he doesn't see Bobo again because he probably done passed. But would he see Frodo?
I would say personally, yes.
I would say no, because if he lived to a ripe age in Middle Earth before going there, Frodo's 20 years plus probably went. He probably is expired. It's nice to think that way in a positive world. But if he was there for like 30 years, he's definitely passed away because your life expectancy, it goes quicker in the Undying Lands. So
Yes.
when he goes there, I don't think he would actually run into Frodo. It would be nice.
It
But
would.
I
It
don't think he
absolutely
does.
would.
So, and where do hobbits go when they pass? Eventually pass. They're pretty much not elves, so they can't stay. Their spirit can't reside in Valinor, so they
Mhm.
has to go to Iluvatar, pretty much
Right.
like men. So, but yeah, the big debate is people. Just to end this, does Frodo and Sam meet again in the Undying Lands? You know, pretty
Well,
much you
guys,
can decide in your head how you want to see that, but you know.
the last thing that I want to say before we end this series is number one, read the books. The movies are great. They are great movies by themselves. But as we've pointed out in this very, very long series, there's a lot of stuff that the books do that the movies do not, and things that the movies do that the books do not, for better or worse. So if you know the movies really well, go read the books and you'll see some things from a different light. If you've never seen the movies but you know the books by heart, give the movies a shot. Obviously, if you're going to be watching the movies for the first time in 2024, we made this point in the beginning. If you're going to be watching the movies for the first time in 2024, just spend the money and commit the extra time to go for the extended editions. The theatrical versions at this point are next to irrelevant.
Yeah,
So,
I wouldn't waste no time on the theatrical. If you're going to do it, the extended versions of these movies and the Hobbit movies. It's better to go with the extended versions. I don't
exactly.
think it would go.
And
And
speaking,
I would recommend. Some people in this day and age don't like books. You can go on YouTube, and there are audio books, even on YouTube, of all of Tolkien's works when it comes to Middle Earth. Not just the Lord of the Rings, not just The Hobbit, but there are other books that he written, like The Children of Huron, The
Mhm.
Silmarillion,
which Michael right now is working on collecting all of those.
and there are the books that he didn't get to finish that his son did. Forgotten Tales, Lost Tales, the latest one book, and I do recommend if you can't get the book, get the audiobook, is the new one of Numenor.
Right.
Okay, that is a great book. I would tell you at least do the audiobook. At least do the audiobooks on these. It'd be a lot easier because reading The Children of Huron and the Silmarillion, unless you can tolerate what it's equivalent to, similar to Old English, the thee, thou type stuff,
Mhm.
It'd probably be better to listen to it than to actually read it.
Right.
So,
With that, guys, the other thing I want to point out just real quick, since he brought him up, we're going to be taking a long break from covering Middle Earth type stuff before we do the Hobbits. And I don't know yet when that will be, but we're gonna slot some different stuff in for Monday nights before we go back to Middle Earth. Like, for example, next week, Phil and I are going to be back talking about Alice Cooper. We've covered his career from 1969 to 1978. We're going to cover his career in part 2 from 1980 to 2001. So there's definitely going to be some interesting stuff to come up there. And then once we're done with Alice Cooper, who knows what we'll get into. So with that, guys, we are going to go ahead and sign off for the night. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will talk to you guys later.